So my name is Anna Arvani, and I'm here to share my own story or my own journey from like sickness to health, and just what I've learned along the way. In particular, I want to speak about fasting and my own experience with water fasting. I was born from, so my parents were migrants, and when they came to Australia, they were actually considered quite poor. So in Greece, they lived on an island. They basically ate lentils, greens, and just, so it was basically what they thought was a very poor food diet. When they arrived to Australia, they had no cavities, they had no illnesses. There was, they were in really, really good health, and they often worked about 15 hours a day. They had 3 kids, and things really changed for us. So if you want to know, that Oompa Loompa on the left is me, and my sister and my brother. And my brother's here today as well. He's one of my big supporters. But we were really sick children. At 2, I was medically constipated, so I was rushed to hospital because I was constipated. My brother had lots of digestive problems. He had his tonsils removed, and my sister became epileptic. So we were really unwell, but we had all the food that my parents would never had. They just gave us everything because they thought that they were deprived of these foods. But they also gave us really good medical care as well. So I also had 6 operations in 6 years. From 10 to 16 years old, I had an operation every year. And I also got a really rare form of measles, and I was hospitalized, and I was photographed from top to bottom just about every day because it was such a rare case of measles that, they wanted to document it and so forth. And, and I was unwell. Like, I had varicose veins in my early 20s, and I just wasn't well. And then I gave birth to my daughter, my wonderful daughter who's here today as well. And I had a fever on and off, and I just had no energy, and I was really, really struggling. And at the time I was reading a book called Fit for Life, and they gave mention to a Dr. Alec Burden. And I was so desperate. I didn't even know what I was going to do when I got there, but I just packed up my bags, and I took my newborn and a toddler with me, and I went to Sydney, and I met Dr. Alec Burden, and I did a 4-day water fast. Not very long at all. It's actually considered a very, very, very short fast. But after that, I just felt so well. I can't explain it. I was just really dumbfounded. I thought, well, what is this? Like, what did I just experience? What changed in my body? But from that moment on, I was just very interested in health and in fasting. And Dr. Burden, for me, when I met him, he was in his late 60s, mid-60s, but he was just glowing with health. I just thought to myself, I want to be like him. He was a doctor that kind of walked his talk. He hardly had any grey hair. His mind was sharp and alert. And I thought, there's something different about this doctor. I had been in the medical system my whole childhood. And then this doctor is just radiating health. So my Dr. Alec Burden trained with Herbert Shelton. I also went on to do a diploma in health science through Dr. Alec Burden as well. And I want to tell you a bit about fasting. So, fasting is really about renewal of your cells. Like, your cells die and new cells are made, and they're often healthier cells, but that also comes through the refeeding. So when you start feeding after a fast, that is actually just as crucial, if not even more crucial than the actual fast itself. It's a thing that I get wrong even to this day sometimes. I either refeed too quickly, and that can just throw your body, out of whack. One of the biggest things for me with the fasting was my mental clarity, this sense of, I grew up disempowered, victim of health, my whole life, and I did this fast, and for the first time in my life, I felt like I am in control of myself, my life, my health, and that sense of well-being was just something I'd never experienced before in my life. It was such a short fast. I was there for 7 days, and and 4 days is really what I would call a minute fast. So So there were just things when I was fasting. I've also done a 10-day fast. I went back to Alec-Burton and I did a 10-day fast. And I've also been to a place called in New South Wales just a few months ago, and I did another 10-day fast. And my own experience with fasting is the first 3 days are the hardest. You're really, really hungry, you know, for the first 3 days, and your body's still using or burning up glucose. And then after about the 3 days, that hunger subsides, but it's actually your body's, saying, eat, you know, be careful you don't starve. So your body's sending you these messages, food, 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 don't forget to eat. But after like the third, fourth day, the hunger disappears, and you find that you're not as hungry. But for me, when I fast, I feel quite tired and I like resting. I don't sleep very well at night when I fast, but there are people that I've met who can sleep 15 hours a day through fasting. Dr. Herbert Shelton has this magnificent book called Fasting Can Save Your Life. I highly recommend it, and Mark does sell it here as well. It's really interesting to read that book because there's lots of people who, through different illnesses, so whether they have multiple sclerosis, asthma, and the fast is documented and how they recover. Herbert Shelton was around in the 1800s, early 1900s, and he wrote many books. And so you may have come across some of his literature, but he was really about the philosophy of nature being perfect, you know, bulletproof basically, and the body is just basically coded to heal. You know, it's really innate in us. We don't need a magic potion, we don't need a drug, we don't need anything to make us heal. That wisdom is within our body. So now we have quite a few fasts that have been documented in medical journals, which is something that's been, when I was fasting in the 1990s, it was pretty unheard of. But now there's a really interesting case study with Alan Goldhammer, who's one of the American natural hygiene physicians, and Michael Clapper, and they've actually documented a fast of a woman with lymphoma, 42 years old, who fasted for 21 days, who had a family. So when you talk about genetics, her whole family, mothers, sisters, everyone passed away from cancer, and she was able to reverse that through fasting. One of the biggest, like the wake-up call for me was when I was at Hygieia Health Centre with Alec-Burton, and he told me about this lady, Julie, and this is for me the power of fasting. So Julie basically went to fast because she had arthritis. She was in her early 50s, and during the fast, the most unusual thing happened. Her face started to disfigure. Even Alec-Burton actually was really shocked and worried, because normally a fast tends to heal from the inside, not so much from the outside. So if you have, say, eczema, you're not going to get a real flare-up of eczema in that healing process. It usually happens from the inside. But this woman's face becomes really disfigured, and he said to her, right, tell me what's happened, you know, is there a history of an accident? She says, no, there's nothing there. So eventually this woman has to ring up her mother in England, and she finds out that she fell off a horse when she was 5 years old, and she had cortisone injections. So the fact that she was 50, and as a child at 5 years old, she had these cortisone injections, and then through the fast, this cortisone is trying to seep out of her body. For me, it's phenomenal. It just shows me the actual power of a fast to basically be able to bring things out of the body, you know, and to be able to reverse illnesses and just to almost renew the whole body, you know, it's almost like starting from zero and starting all over again. So that for me was one of the most powerful stories I've heard about a healing through fasting. There is a Walter Longo, an Italian professor who's been studying fasting, and he's very acceptable in the medical literature. He started doing research on mice, and he found that the mice that were fasted and fed fasted and fed outlived the ones that just were fed. So the ones that just kept eating every day, 3 meals a day, actually the ones that were fasting and fed actually outlived them by double the amount. They also didn't get cancer as much as the ones that were just fed. So they only got cancers towards the end of their lives, but not during their lives like the ones that were fed constantly. And now Professor Longo is doing the same studies on human beings, on people. And so his research is very accepted and widely published. He does only a short fast, 5 to 7 days a year, like something that he does. Like, he doesn't look into long fast, but I know Dr. Alec Burden, he would fast people sometimes 60 days, and 40 days on just water only. This is just basically just talking about how, I don't know if, when you're fasting, you're basically, the nucleus of the cell always stays the same, but you start breaking up this information inside the cell, and that sometimes people take a fast to the absolute maximum that they can in the hope of breaking down all this information, and then when you start refeeding, that information becomes renewed, so to speak. But also if your refeeding is whole food, plant diets, those cells just become so invigorated because they've got a new kind of memory, and so that you're able to have such a superior level of health once you've fasted. So these are places that offer fasting. So Hygieia Health Center, Alec Burden, if you know, has passed away about 4 years ago. And his wife Neshla still sometimes runs fasts, but it's sporadic. It's not like it's not like you can get in whenever you want to. It's more like her timeline as opposed to when you're available. I've gone to Dr. John Fielder, who's a naturopath out in Cairns. He's really interesting. He's in his 80s. He works for about 6 hours a day. He's got 100 acres of land, and you see him literally working every day on the land, then goes and has a swim in the river, then starts his first meal about midday and has 2 meals all raw, totally raw. So he's a really interesting man, and I went there. I didn't fast, I just ate with him for about a couple of weeks. And then Doug Evans, I just went there 2 months ago. Doug Evans was a student of Alec Burden as well, and he actually offered he's got this incredible cabin that he built, and he does fasting in New South Wales, if anyone's interested in fasting. And he's pretty easy to book. He's got a couple of cabins on his property, and he's actually on the coast as well, which is really quite scenic if you want to go for walks and things like that. There's also True North, and I know Philip Ross is not here, but Philip Ross has done about 5 or 6 fasts. He was going once every year and doing long fasts over 20 days at True North. He's also available if anyone wants to talk to him. He's happy to be called today if anyone's got any questions about doing longer fasts. He really loved the experience of True North. I think they're a 50-bed clinic. Some people might prefer to go to Doug because it's only like 2 cabins and it's very personal, and some people love the social aspect and the fact that at True North there's you have cooking demonstrations, you have yoga teachers, you have like 4 or 5 doctors that are on duty all the time, and some people love that kind of the scale of that kind of presentation. So an interesting thing I just want to share about, you've all got these handouts that, and that's about the nutrient density of food. And basically, so when you look at food and the vitamins, minerals, phytonutrients, and all those things that are in food, it's all about renewing cells. It's all about cells being able to repair, keep like poisons away, and just keep regenerating and renewing. And in that chart, you would see that greens, are at the highest nutrient density, which I'm sure a lot of people know that. But an interesting thing also about chlorophyll that comes from greens is it's very similar to blood. With blood being iron being at the center and chlorophyll with magnesium. But in terms of minerals. It's actually greens and blood are almost identical except for one mineral. And during the Second World War, after the Second World War, they didn't have enough blood for blood transfusion, and they used chlorophyll because it is almost identical to blood. So that's just something interesting that I feel like, you know, I've always thought that fruit was one of the most important things that you can eat, and I still believe that, but I also believe that eating greens can give you that superior level of health. What Dr. Alec Burden offered was this philosophy called natural hygiene, and I know Bruce Standish, who owned this shop too, was always about natural hygiene, and it's a really simple philosophy. It's clean air, sunshine, water, whole plant food, exercise, activity, and sleep, and positive relationships. And whenever I find that my life is, you know, I don't feel as energetic, I always look at those things and I ask myself, well, what's missing? You know, it's not always the food. I do think the food is a big component, but sometimes it's just, you know, I haven't been moving around as much as I'd like to. Sometimes it might be just stress. You know, there's just a lot of stress. And for me, one of the biggest things that I've learned is just the importance of sleep. And I don't think we value sleep enough in our culture as well. So I've started up my own little business called Hygieia Health Retreat as well. And one of the things that I do is I go to people and I go to their homes and I try to help them basically go on a whole food plant-based diet. So that's from my website. If you go to the website, there's lots of suggested reading and information. One of the books that I really suggest reading is The Blue Zones. So this man looked at 5 different places in the world where people live over 100 years and longer, and they have really good health. And so a couple of these are little islands, but basically they had many things in common, but the main thing they had in common was they ate mainly whole plant-based foods. And that was the overarching thing in all these people. Some of them, so for example, some of them, like they talked about, so these 7-day Adventists in California, they also talked about, you know, relationships and the importance of relationship and faith. But basically, these people had a lot of things in common, and they often grew their own food, and they ate mainly whole plant-based foods. So, and that's a really, really good read. These are films to watch. Now, this film, Unwell, it's a series on Netflix, but series number 4 is on fasting. So Alan Goldhammer is on that. They give lots of people who have fasted they give their experience. They also, Professor Longo, the Italian professor, he's on that. And there are some people who are against fasting and they give their reasons. But it's only 40 minutes long. And if you get a chance to watch that, I really highly recommend it. These are doctors, like Dr. John Mcdougall. I find him to have been one of the most generous of all the physicians that I've ever come across. He would, in the past, you could email him and he would send you a whole lot of information, links. At the moment, his son has taken over the business and you pay for that, but still, it's the website itself, it's just, there's so much information, so many videos, and it's basically all free as well. So, psychology is interesting too, because I think there's a lot of reason why people choose to not eat well, and I think a lot of that psychology in terms of, you know, sometimes we can drown ourselves in food. We can search for I guess a comfort in food, and so Gabor Mate is a really interesting psychologist. I mean, he's looked at people with addictions for his whole life, but I also believe that food can also be an addiction as well. So one of the things with Dr. John Mcdougall, he talks about the gladiators a lot in his books and also in some of his videos, but basically they were known as the Horendiati men. They were literally the Bali men. So the gladiators were the strongest men on the planet, but they hardly ever ate meat. They did bone tests on there, and they found that the mineral quality of their bones showed them that they were just basically eating a vegetarian diet. But it's true to say that everyone in Rome 2,000 years ago was predominantly on a vegetarian diet, except for the kings and queens, you know, and these gladiators will often be invited to kings' homes, and you know, and they would have feasts, but they would refuse to eat the meat before a show because they knew it would just slow them down and they would not be able to perform. There's also Dr. Mcdougall, who he's got this daily dozen, like 12 foods that have really unique properties that we can't find in other foods, like things like turmeric and berries. And he's an interesting doctor because he was given scholarships when he graduated all around America, and he ended up choosing the university that had who offered the best nutritional course as opposed to the university that offered the best medical, you know, degree. So he was very interested in nutrition because his grandmother was one of the first people who basically had a heart attack, and I think she had gone to see Dr. Esselstyn in America, and she was able to reverse her heart attack and, you know, and not have any symptoms of heart disease. And so she was very much an inspiration to him growing up. And but he's also got a book called How Not to Die, and he talks a lot about, you know, diet and lifestyle. This is a room that I also offer at home, at my home. It's like a bungalow. People want to stay and try out a fully plant-based diet. I also love to paint. I'm not just about food, and although food's my life and something I feel very passionate about health, but I'm a full-time teacher and I teach art. I also grow my own food. I've got a little house in the northern suburbs, but I've got over 17 fruit trees. And, you know, I do a lot of entertaining at home as well. People ask me, what do you eat? And I say just about everything that's plant-based, that's whole. I'd love to tell you that, you know, my life's been smooth sailing and I've got it all right, but I'd be really lying to you. About 10 years ago, I had, basically I was sort of diagnosed as having an autoimmune, but in fact that autoimmune probably has existed for most of my life, even growing up. And basically there were lots of things going on. Like I started a new job, extremely stressed. I felt like in my job I was in that fight or flight response from the morning to the night. I also was caring for a family member. And I found that I was so tired, it became a vicious cycle. I started eating out more, buying food, running to work without food, getting to work thinking, what am I going to eat, going to the local shops, trying to find food, and it just became a really vicious cycle. I was really ashamed at that time, because I thought, you know, I was an expert or I had all this knowledge, and, you know, and it's something today that, you know, I kind of feel like, you know, I think it's not true to say that, you know, you can just get really well and you just stay well, and, you know, you will have times in your life where your own health will be compromised, and I felt that that was the case for me. These are little things that I've learned along the way. So this is my wisdom, and maybe not so much for everyone, but one food is not going to save you. So apple cider vinegar will not cure everything for you, okay? And so people get fixated and they go up to a health shop and they buy something thinking that this is going to be the answer for them, and it's not the case. It's a combination of whole foods that is really going to give you health and vitality. And know what to eat and just get on with your life, you know, and just enjoy your life. And this is something that I've experienced. Get rich and grow your own food. Become a giver and a receiver. Like, I love buying gifts for people, but the biggest thing I've found, the generosity that comes when you grow your own food and you share that with people. I really love doing that, and I actually feel really wealthy. I know it sounds crazy, but I'm just growing my food, but I actually feel that it's a currency. It's a different type of currency. I'm feeding myself, but I'm also feeding others, and I'm feeding them something that's really good for them too. So, and then, you know, stop preaching, just go live your life, walk your talk, and some people may follow you and some people may never follow you. And I know for my parents, especially my mum, she, believes in the medical model. She can hardly walk. She's only 77 years old. I don't think that's too old, but she's really going downhill. Every week she's got about 2-3 doctor's appointments, and I just have to accept that they're the choices that my mum's made. And so I think that's about it. And does anyone have any questions for me? So
yes.
Yes.
So can people do short-term fat fasts at your place as well?
No, because I'm not a doctor, and I think with the fasting, I don't want to take people's money and not for them to get the optimal results. And because I think if I said to you, I've seen 20 fasts or 30 fasts and I've fasted 10 times myself, it's nothing compared to someone who has supervised 20,000 fasts. I'm happy for people to come to my home. I'm happy for them to go on a whole food diet. Sometimes I introduce a few days of juicing in that process as well, so they have juices as opposed to just water only fasting. But I don't water fast because I don't have the medical background.
So, yeah, my friend in Bali, he runs a juice feast for people, but he calls it a fast, and he introduces all the fasting literature, but keeps them on juice during the actual course of the fast.
Yeah.
So that way he's selling the fasting information, as it were, and he's got people's time and, changing their regimen and whatever. So that could be one way to do it, like you offer, although Alec wouldn't allow you to say juice fasting, but that's what
a juice is
that's
a juice
what my
feast,
friend in Bali does.
Basically, he used to call it a juice feast. But I think if you have medical problems or health problems, I really do believe the water fast is the quickest way to solve those problems. And juice, you can do juice, but where people juice, when you can fast for 20 days and get incredible results in a juice fast, I think you would have to do it for 40 days to find that you'll get the same kind of results as the water only fasting. Yes.
Just on there's two things. Thank you for actually talking about failing on your journey as well. There's a lot of people out there who do this, and they basically create this perfect image. And then obviously a lot of us who look at it go, well, you might do this as a profession, but we have kids to look after, or elderly parents, we have full-time jobs, we have budget to look at.
Yeah.
And so they make it an unrealistic
That's
goal.
right, yeah.
And actually talking about, hey, look, this is what's happened. I have fallen off the wagon. I've actually done this, and it isn't a perfect journey.
Yes.
Is very relatable, and obviously means that people can. Well, if you come off, you get back on.
Yeah.
It's a journey, and we're human.
Yeah.
So I just wanted to thank you for that, and I also wanted to talk to you about, how you're talking about your parents and everything, your mum and stuff.
Yeah.
I honestly think that your family is the hardest people to convert, and pretty much I expected that I would never ever convert anyone in my family, even though I've done a lot of converting of other people. But I just wanted to let you know, after 25 years, this is my mum right here.
Okay.
She's finally listening to me, and
Yeah.
she's come to this talk, and she's
Yeah.
had a lot of health benefits. And I just wanted somebody else who wasn't me
Yeah.
to actually say this stuff. And
Yeah.
I think it's possible, if anyone has
That's
family,
right.
that there's a possibility you might actually get through it.
Yeah. Oh, thank you. Thank you so much.
Yeah,
Thanks
thank
for
you.
sharing. I really appreciate the feedback. Yeah.
Yeah.
And you do. I agree. There's so many people out there that kind of make health seem like it's just a continuum, and it's not. And the thing is, for me, falling off the bandwagon made me address the factor of sleep. And how now I know it sounds terribly boring, but sometimes I say to myself at 8 o'clock, off you go to bed, and I know that I feel like embarrassed, and sometimes too, I'm thinking, gee, it's a bit early. But I also say, no, look, I get up at 5, so I think, if I start preparing myself at 8, it's respecting my body, it's respecting my physiology. I have limitations. So what are my limitations? Well, my limitation is that I need to get at least 7-8 hours sleep for me to be functional, to be able to go and do the work that I do. So even though I failed, that failing also became my learning. I actually learned, and I gained so much more from it because, So, and I think that wisdom that comes through failing sometimes, you know, so sleep was never on the agenda for me. It's something that I kind of ignore. Do I need that sleep? It doesn't, yeah, yeah, so, yeah.
Do you have some tips about sleep? Because that's my Achilles heel. Exercise is not, diet is not, but sleep is the thing that I have problems with.
Okay.
I do spend a lot of time staring at a screen, because that's my work. So I'm obviously getting a lot of blue light, and that's stimulating. So I'm getting my cortisol level up. But even when I'm not doing that, I still find it a little trouble.
Because your body's in like a routine now, so it's very hard to break that habit. But I think getting off the screen, because it does trick your brain to thinking that it's daylight when it's not. So that's one of the things with the being on the screen. So, and I also think getting into a routine. So teaching your body, even if you're not terribly tired, that this is my bedtime. You know, so whatever it is that you want to choose, if it's 9:30, but you get yourself into a routine, and then with time your body will learn that new routine. But I also believe that just you've got to get off the screen and the technology, you know, like, you know, you just say after dinner, that's it, you know, I don't get on.
Yeah, I'm finding that taking melatonin doesn't really seem to do much anymore.
Okay, yeah. Look, you know, I just find that, like, this is what's helped me heaps, and I never thought that I would be able to fall asleep at 8 o'clock or 8:30, and I'm the same, like I would be on emails all night, you know, and things like that, but I learned to come home and say that laptop's not coming out of my bag, you know, and that I'm going to put my own self before my work, and then, you know, I get up pretty early, so if there is something, you know, that I need to do, I can always address it in the morning. But I just find that, you know, it's really about listening to your body and just working out, you know, what is stimulating you. Is it the stress of work? And, you know, do you have to shift, you know, the work that you do on your iPad or whatever, do you have to shift the time of that and make it more during the day? I mean, and then, you know, then you say, well, but my daytime's for exercising and my daytime's for doing other things. But if you can find a way to shift the use of technology, I just, you know, I'm starting to feel more and more like it is unnatural. We sort of all know that, just sitting at a screen and sitting down for so many hours. But it's even now with COVID, because so many people are working from home, it's actually becoming, it's becoming the new normal, but it's really not normal. It's really unnormal.
It never was.
Yeah, it never was. That's right. It never really was. So I find that going to bed really early and then honouring that and then making it a habit has actually helped me fall asleep and, you know, and wake up feeling really revived. Like I used to wake up feeling like if I don't have a coffee, I'm not going to be able to get to work, you know, and I don't have that anymore. So I feel like, you know, going to sleep, having done that fast that I did a couple of months ago, and then just saying to myself after that fast that that's it, I'm going to really look at sleep, and then, you know, and then that's really helped me. And so I don't drink caffeine anymore, but I used to drink caffeine. And even Dr. Doug Evans, like I talked to him about how, you know, I felt like I couldn't get on, you know, I couldn't go to work if I didn't have a cup of coffee. And he explained to me when he ran Hopewood, which was like similar to a fasting centre in New South Wales, and he said that he would have over 20 patients, one after the other, to see, and he said the only way that he could get through his day some days was to drink coffee too. So, and I say that in a way to sort of show you that we're just really human and we're trying to get through our days, and, you know, and sometimes we will use a stimulant when we have to, because that's, you know, that's how we're going to, you know, so if you...
That's right. I was just going to say, to link the experience or poor experience that I'm having with sleep back to fasting, I actually found that I slept really well when I was fasting.
Oh, did you?
Yeah,
wow,
like a log.
Wow.
Like 12 hours would be nothing.
Yeah, it's a good technology reset, fasting as well.
Yeah.
And get yourself a decent bicycle and just do more exercise, and then you're off the technology.
Yeah, fasting is a real forced rest. This is what I love about fasting. You've got no choice. You're forced to rest. And, you know, and maybe that's what your body needed. It actually needed that sleep.
So that's what I'm thinking of doing. That's what's been prompting me lately. Wanting to do a water fast is the fact that I know that I'm going to sleep well. So I'm going to be doing that soon.
It's a good excuse to do one. Do you find that when you fast, do you enjoy the fasting process?
I do, as you were saying. It's not it's not an even first 3 days. It's not like I'm hungry the whole time. I usually don't get hungry until probably 12 to 24 hours in.
Yeah.
It gets hardest, not so much at the 40 hours, but probably the hardest is around about 45 to 55 hours, somewhere in there, maybe 60 hours. Once you hit the full 72 hours, it does start to become easier.
Yeah.
I was doing 3 to 4 day fasts every month for a while.
Okay.
The longest I've done was I did a little bit of juice at the start, but I did 11 days, basically water. And I did that as that's what sort of led me into really making a commitment to raw food, because I did have a health crisis, and rather than go and see a doctor, rather than do anything else, I just fasted.
Yeah,
So,
excellent.
yeah.
I would recommend people, especially if you're going to do your first fast, that it's like a medically supervised fast. And I'll just give you an example. Someone my mum knows decided to start fasting. He's been ringing me up, so he just rang me up this morning because he's had a crisis, didn't know really what the crisis was about, then drank some coffee, we got off the fast, in his own way, saying that, he didn't know how to cope with it. So he's ringing me up for advice, but it's almost too late because, it's like he's already broken the fast in a pretty unhealthy way anyway. So, and this is why I would say if you're going to do a fast, especially if you have a medical condition, I would say do it supervised. And it's so nice when someone holds your hand and says, don't worry, you're all right, like, oh my God, like, I'm so dizzy, I think I'm going to fall over. Oh, no, that's okay, this is all normal. And if someone holds your hand and, and just says that everything's okay, and they do take your blood pressure and they look at your urine and they just keep reaffirming that you're okay, it doesn't make the fast as daunting, I think. But if people just go into it, but everyone.
My circumstance was very different when I did that one. I was in an abusive relationship, so there was no support there. In fact, I was getting abused whilst I was going to the fast.
Yeah.
I had a violent fever. I was quite sick. The bed was drenched, wet with fever. I was delirious.
Yeah.
But I stuck at it.
Yeah.
So, I came out the other side much better for it.
That's excellent. Oh,
Yeah.
well. Okay.
And the longest juice fast I've done is about 4 months, and that was pretty amazing.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow, amazing.
That was like a religious experience.
Yeah.
I like to say it's better than drugs.
Okay. Wow. Okay. There is a Joe Ross, fat, sick and nearly dead, and he does a 60-day juice fast. So again, if you've got Netflix, you can find that. But he does a really long extended juice fast, and he has his own website and his own following where he gets people to do juice fasts as well. So that's pretty amazing. Thanks for sharing that. Yes.
My question is, obviously a lot of people in this room are perhaps familiar with better eating and better habits, but I hope this video reaches people who perhaps aren't at that stage yet. And what is your recommendation to start creating better habits, especially if you've been brought up your whole life knowing one thing and you want to make a change, but it kind of seems a bit too daunting?
Yeah. When I work with people, clients in their own home, one of the first things I do is I work out what they like. What is it that you like? I mean, in terms of whole food, tell me what it is that you like. Oh, well, I only like strawberries. Okay, we're going to get 4 pints of strawberries. What else do you like? And we work with what you like. So you make the changes slowly. And once your taste buds get accustomed to this food and you're not as toxic and you're not craving these foods, you'll find that you start to say, well, strawberries aren't so bad. I might even try some melons now. And, I might even try pineapple. Do you see what I'm saying? You just keep building on, but you've got to start somewhere. And I always say there's no point eating artichokes if you don't like them. And I'm not going to force them down your throat, but start with what you like. That's whole. That that has not been processed. Start with whole foods and the things that you like and eat them. Eat fruit and vegetables like your life depends on it, because it does. It does depend on it. And that's the only thing I can suggest. Just start with what you love. Just start with that. And I'm sure you'll feel so well that you will be addicted to this. I feel so amazing. I want more. I want more of this. This feels pretty amazing. Like, to be able to go from being sick and to have that experience of being really sick, unwell, and and to be like part of the medical system where you go in and they say, we don't know what's wrong with you, but take this. We don't know what's wrong with you, but this should fix. This should suppress the symptom. To be part of that system and then to feel liberated from that, like to not have migraines, you know, to wake up and to have energy so that you don't even need a coffee. And it's pretty. It's a feeling that you can't buy. You know, it's a feeling that can make you feel like you are, you know, pretty much, you know, like amazing within your own body's physiology. Like, you know, I just can't explain it, but for me, I got so many psychological benefits of changing my diet. You know, like I wasn't depressed. I didn't believe that, you know, I believed that I could control my own life, that I could get, you know, that I was in charge of my own destiny. Okay, so hello. Just in time, the talk's over. Okay.
But,
any other questions? Yes.
Is there a better time to fast, like summer, winter? I've always found it easier in summer.
I prefer summer because I feel the cold.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so when I start fasting, one of the things for me is keeping warm. And yeah, so I prefer summer, and then when you get off the fast, you know, the fruit is in abundance, and you can juice, and you can even stay on a raw food diet for a little while. That's just my preference. But you know, and I know that with Doug Evans in Sydney, he's booked out for the whole of summer. So I guess that's the time most people prefer to fast.
But
yes.
You were Alec Burton's promoter in Melbourne. How many of his talks did you promote, and do you have any anecdotes from that time?
We used to organise talks for him, so I think we've done them in a few different places, but Melbourne University I think was one of them. And so I think for me, getting this information out there, for me at a time when it was so new and unacceptable, that was what kept me going. Like, I wanted people to experience what I experienced. I wanted people to see that they did not have to be a victim of, illness and disease. And so for me, working with Alec Burton at that time was really about spreading the information around. And Alec Burton never advertised in his whole 60 years of practice. He never once advertised, because it was always word of mouth. People got well. People went to him, got well, and they went home. And the thing with this philosophy is that there's very little money to be made. I'm not selling you anything. I've got nothing to sell you, because it's really about eating well and you feel so good. Then I don't need to sell you a vitamin or a herb or anything. So, so I think that time for me was just really just about putting this information out there, and it's really great today that it's becoming more mainstream. I think that's what I thought. I was a freak, 25 years ago, because this is, people would actually say to me, you are a freak. I mean, what do you mean you're not eating dessert? Like, we're going out for dinner and you're not eating this stuff, and how can you do that? How can you sit there? And people would sort of give me that kind of feedback, and I thought, am I really strange? But I just wanted health. I just wanted to feel good within my own body more than I wanted anything else. And that was, the compromise I was prepared to make, so.
I feel that a lot of these doctors, like Burton, not so much Burton, but Goldhammer and Clapper, they've maybe presented the idea to you that there wasn't much literature about fasting before they were on the scene. And admittedly, all these sort of new studies have come out recently through True North. But actually, like, the world's oldest book mentions fasting, the world's oldest printed book, and there was extensive studies at the University of Chicago in fasting. The whole sort of body of German medical literature deals with fasting a lot. And I mean, admittedly, I have been in the past a professor of cultural studies and literature and stuff like that. I can look at the whole gamut of the amount of information, and these doctors are maybe sort of very stuck in their studies. But the idea that that fasting information has not been available from the get-go, I think, the James, like the oldest book, is a vegan book that concerns fasting, and it says sometimes it will work, sometimes it will not, but you should do it anyway.
Yeah, well, that's interesting. But Hippocrates, thousands of years ago, fasted people. He took people up into temples.
Well, for example,
and fasted people. They had them on a very restrictive diet. I think it was probably, a few hundred calories, and people got well. They had temples. They got away from the drinking and the parties and everything that was going on in those days, and they would go to these temples, and and they fasted, and it's as old as time itself. And people were not able to access food the way that we access food. There was no milk bar in every corner, no 7-Eleven on every corner. And so the fact that we can access so much food, people naturally fasted. We are designed to fast. We are designed to skip meals. It's the way our anatomies are made. We are made to store fat for those rainy days. We're not made to, and this concept of 3 meals a day, where does that come from? Who invented that? Do we need 3 meals a day? And is it okay to skip a meal? Sometimes if you just don't feel that great, sometimes just skipping a meal to the next day or the next meal can actually make the difference between feeling so much better and then so much worse. It just gives you, so digestion takes up so much energy, and so as soon as you give your body a break from digesting, then your body's got nothing else to do but to heal. That's the concept of fasting, that your body's got all this energy, and what does it do? It starts to clean, it starts to heal. So but I totally agree. It's old. It's in many religious books. It's not something that's just come around now. But I think what people are trying to do now, there is a science, and this is Professor Longo, the Italian professor. He's looking at the science of fasting, and that's the good thing about this. That now people are more open to it because we can actually quantify it and say it's a science. And we've done studies on rats, and now we're going to do studies on humans. And
in the 20th century, there was a lot of propaganda, towards high-calorie foods and meat and alcohol and things like that. So there is a sort of pushback sort of period.
Thank you.
Those magic words, peer review.
Yeah, that's right.
Do you believe in transmission or terrain theory, or both?
So, when I studied with Dr. Burden, he talked about Louis Pasteur, who invented the germ theory, and
Antoine Béchamp.
And he said that on his deathbed, Louis Pasteur said, "I made a mistake. It wasn't the germ, it was the host. So the person carrying the germ is the problem, not the actual germ itself. So the germ is inside us as opposed to the germ being out there." Is that what you're asking?
That kind of thing.
Yeah.
I mean, say for example, Dr. John Snow, who's the modern father of epidemiology, he was a vegan, and he sort of, people were dying within a day of drinking water with cholera in it, and he identified that on a map, and that's what we're experiencing today around the world with COVID, is the mapping of disease in exactly the same manner as a vegan invented.
Yeah.
But he did other stuff, like he took his own anesthetics a lot and did his kidneys in and died young. But, he believed in terrain theory, sound mind, sound body, sound spirit through diet, as well as basically, putting germ theory on the map, so to speak.
Yeah. Well, Dr. Burden used to always say health is immunity. Health is immunity. So,
And also, if you're drinking cholera, it wouldn't be the cholera bug that would be the problem. It would be the toxins in the water, I would say.
Well, I don't know. I wouldn't be game to drink a glass of this cholera water.
I think I, because of the toxins.
Are there any other questions? Also, Philip Ross is available if anyone wanted to talk to him. He wasn't able to come today, but he's done a longer fast, 22 days. I'm hoping to do a 22-day fast one day too.
You need to not work full time.
Sorry?
You need to not work, have the privilege of not working full
Yeah,
time.
that's right.
And that's something everyone has to know. If you can't do a 20-day fast, if you're working full time, you literally can't unless you take time off.
No,
and it's a
right.
privilege.
Yeah,
so,
it is. It is. And Dr. Burden told me also a story about a man that decided to fast and labour and work. And about 28 days into his fast, mind you, he was a labourer, his wife rings him up and she said, "Could you come and see my husband? I think he's dying. He tried fasting on his own, but going to work." And so Alec Burden had to drive something like 4 or 5 hours away, and he started refeeding this man with like a dropper, like literally giving him drops of juice, orange juice, you know, a couple of drops every few hours. But yes, you need the luxury of not working to do a fast. The whole idea is that you conserve the energy for healing, not for working and moving. And that's the whole idea. You want the most speedy recovery or speedy like elimination and detoxification, and you can't do that while you're running around. So,
it can save you a lot of money if you're, you know, trying to sort of reduce your work. Like if you fast, you know, lots of habits you can reset, and that, you know, eating is quite expensive in Australia today, depending on what you eat. Not eating can actually, you know, save you $300 a week.
Unfortunately, paying my rent is more expensive than eating.
So conclude the talk. What do you think? Unless someone else has got a question?
Come on, Anna, more please. That's great.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.